Of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Finance. Pursuant to the order of reference of May 10, 2022, the committee is meeting on Bill C-19, an act to implement certain provisions of the budget tabled in Parliament on April 7, 2022, and other measures. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November 25, 2021. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. Per the directive of the Board of Internal Economy on March 10, 2022, all those attending the meeting in person must wear a mask, except for members who are at their place during proceedings. I would now like to make a few comments for the benefit of the witnesses and the members. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. Interpretation for those on Zoom. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. For members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. For members on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can, and we appreciate your patience and understanding in this regard. I request that members and witnesses mutually treat each other with respect and decorum. I would now like to welcome today's witnesses. From Agri-Food Analytics Lab, Sylvain Charlebois, who's the director and professor. From the Association of Meat and Honey Alcohol Producers of Quebec, René Bougie, president, and Vincent Lambert, secretary. From JDRF Canada, Dave Proughton, President and Chief Executive Officer, and Alana Wiseman, endocrinologist. And from Publish What You Pay Canada, we have Sasha Caldera, Campaign Manager, Beneficial Ownership and Transparency. We'll now begin with Mr. Charlebois from Agri-Food Analytics Lab for his opening remarks for up to 5 minutes, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, dear members. I would like to thank the committee for inviting me to speak about Canada's food affordability situation. Food supply chain hangovers due to the pandemic and the global impact of the invasion of Ukraine have enticed many to question the global nature of our food system. The entire planet operates under a 90-day production cycle of agricultural commodities. Canada's contribution occurs obviously in the fall, along with the US and parts of Europe. About 15% of all calories on Earth come from wheat. Corn covers a lot of calorific ground as well. With Ukraine coupled with sanctions against Russia, our global wheat deficit this year will be a significant challenge given that 25% of wheat exports come from that region. And India's decision today to ban exports of wheat will only make things worse. We are going to be short on wheat, corn, barley, and many other commodities. By the time we're done with 2022, it is likely that more than 100 million more people will experience either famine or acute hunger, something that the world has never seen before. Canada will be fine, food access-wise, but food will get more expensive. Poor nations will always lose access to their food supply first, while richer nations like Canada will secure food supplies by paying more. Poor countries have no capacity to store calories at all. Germany, typically a big buyer of Ukrainian commodities, stated retail food prices could increase by as much as 50% this year. Commodity traders are already buying and even hoarding what they can get to secure supplies needed for the next several months. Canada can and should make a greater difference. Of some of the challenges we are currently facing, fertilizer access is certainly one. These critical inputs for farmers are on average about $1,500 US a ton, which is 5 times what it was 12 months ago. Farmers needed fertilizers to produce crops. But the market is controlled by a handful of very greedy multinationals whose supply manages their products to artificially boost fertilizer prices. Some of these multinationals are actually right here in Canada. Many farmers are paying tariffs on fertilizers right now, even surcharges. In fact, some farmers right now are even purchasing fertilizer without even knowing what the price will be. We're all paying for years of genetic engineering bashing in the media as well by groups who have used fear to put forward an organic-centric diet for affluent city dwellers. The approval process of new traits for new crops can take years in many developed countries, including Canada. Agriculture is and will always be about technologies, and we need to accept it as such. A globalization 2.0 agenda will require getting nations to continue to trade, but also it will require them to adhere to an acceptable humanitarian conduct to participate in a global economy. Le Canada devrait prendre action pour
Canada will have to take action based on a strong food self-sufficiency strategy to make our agriculture more efficient and more productive. Quebec is the only province in Canada that has already adopted such a strategy. Canada needs a way to produce more in its open economy, offering us better food access and affordability while growing our agricultural sector thanks to trade, but in a sustainable way. A comprehensive strategy would include sustainable water use practices as well as renewable energies to support agriculture. Canada lacks ambition. If we get this right, in a few decades, we can do so much. We've so much more to offer. Thank you, Mr. Charlevoix.
And honey alcohol producers of Quebec for up to 5 minutes.
Oui, alors bonjour tout le monde.
Yes, hello everyone. I'd like to thank you for inviting me to come speak to the committee. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm René Bouger. I'm co-owner of Mielerie King in Kingsley Falls in Quebec. It's a mead-producing institution, and we produce honey, wines, and mead in Quebec. I'm part of the Association of Quebec. Our association represents almost half of the mead producers in Quebec, who, among them, produce over 50% of mead. Right now in Quebec, there are about 25 mead production permits, and the number of them are growing year by year. So we're here today because we saw that in June in the bill, it is laid out the exemption on the access the excise taxes on wines will come to an end. And if that comes into play for our meat sector, it will really affect us very negatively. Taking into account our current situation, well, we're facing a number of challenges. These die-off of bees that you've surely heard about, that's an ongoing concern and that's becoming more difficult year by year, higher and higher production costs as well. Our inputs in the fields to take care of our bees, the diesel costs, the cost to transport our goods and commodities, the cost of bottles, even of labels, costs are rising everywhere. And foreseeing the end of this exemption means once again higher costs to produce our meat. So what we would like would to see to it that this excise duty exemption regime is prolonged. Then there were negotiations undertaken by provincial producers, but in Quebec, the honey alcohol and even fruit alcohol producers managed to ensure that the markup that the SAQ will be bringing in will not affect them under the World Trade Organization ruling, and we'd like that exemption to apply from the feds as well, as is laid out in the bill for people who produce alcohol at home. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. Bougie.
Canada, is it Mr. Proton?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. Good afternoon. My name is Dave Proughton. I'm the President and CEO of JDRF in Canada. We're the leading charitable funder of type 1 diabetes in the world. And I'm joined by Dr. Alana Wiseman, who's a clinician scientist and endocrinologist at Mount Sinai Hospital and University Health Network. We're here to offer one key recommendation that will vastly improve the lives of Canadians who live with type 1 diabetes. It's a much needed and long awaited change to the disability tax credit. Type 1 diabetes is a relentless 24 hours a day, 7 days a week disease that requires constant monitoring and attention. And from the moment of diagnosis, a person with type 1 diabetes is reliant on insulin to stay alive. And therefore, by definition, it truly is a life-sustaining therapy. And the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimate that someone living with type 1 diabetes has to make roughly 300 or more decisions per day than someone without type 1. They need to decide, do I need to eat? Do I not need to eat? Do I need to eat less? Do I need to eat more? Do I need to take insulin? How much insulin do I need? Do I need to check my blood sugar? And even with all of this vigilant management and innovative technologies, the risk of long-term complications like heart and kidney disease and the short-term realities of dangerously low blood sugars, which can lead to confusion, coma, and even death, still remain. So that is why we're asking the committee today to make things a little easier for those living with type 1 diabetes by ensuring they have equitable access to the disability tax credit by removing or reducing the antiquated and arbitrary 14-hour-a-week requirement. It simply is the right thing to do. Type 1 diabetes is a costly disease, not only for our healthcare system, but for individuals and families. And depending on which province you live in and what type of benefits package you have through your employer, it can cost Canadians with type 1 diabetes out of pocket up to $15,000 a year. Previously, JDRF has advocated for reducing the number of hours needed to qualify for the DTC from 14 to 10, which was also proposed in the Fairness for Canadians with Disabilities Act. The Disability Advisory Committee, appointed by the Minister of National Revenue, actually proposed an even better solution, that qualification be automatic for all Canadians who need life-sustaining therapy, including insulin. So we implore the committee to amend the Budget Implementation Act and call for either a removal of the 14-hour requirement entirely, or alternatively, a reduction in the hours to 7, so that more Canadians with type 1 diabetes can qualify. And to speak more on the disability tax credit, I will turn things over to Dr. Wiseman.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Alana Wiseman. We are supportive and grateful for the commitments made in Budget 2021 to recognize more activities under current requirements, such as time spent determining dietary intake, physical exertion, medical appointments, and medically required recuperation. This will help more people with type 1 diabetes access the tax credit. However, the current requirements are still problematic from a policy and medical perspective. The 14-hour requirement for eligibility was introduced when the DTC was established in 1988. As stated by the Canada Revenue Agency, the purpose of the DTC is to provide for greater tax equity by allowing some relief for disability costs, since these are unavoidable additional expenses that other taxpayers do not have to face. People with type 1 diabetes should not have to worry about how they are going to pay for insulin supplies, advanced glucose monitoring devices, or insulin pumps. Those costs exist regardless of how much time per week is spent on managing diabetes. For example, those living with type 1 diabetes rely on insulin to survive. Diabetes management has come to a point where insulin pumps are viable options for individuals looking for an alternative approach to calculating and administering daily doses of insulin. While an insulin pump saves time and may help ease the mental burden associated with calculating insulin doses, it costs $6,000 to $8,000 and is not often covered by traditional health insurance plans. Less time spent on managing diabetes does not equate to an eased financial burden. The current requirements for the disability tax credit are rife with inequities in access, based solely on how healthcare providers fill out forms. The DTC could be approved for one person while being denied for another who has the same condition, simply because of a difference in the way their individual healthcare provider filled out their application form. The current eligibility process is cumbersome, and the 14-hour requirement is arbitrary, presenting many challenges for those trying to access the benefit. This barrier can be improved by removing the requirement entirely or reducing the threshold to 7 hours to eliminate uncertainty around qualification. If this threshold is not removed or reduced to 7 hours, individuals with type 1 diabetes will continue to be denied access, forcing them to remain living with the financial burden that comes with this disease and without the proper support in place to ease it. I would like to thank JDRF and Dave for their work and thank the committee for hearing our testimony. We hope you will consider our recommendation to make the DTC more equitable and accessible to all with type 1 diabetes.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wiseman, Mr. Proten. We are now moving to Publish What You Pay Canada and Sasha Caldera for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and fellow House Finance Committee members. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. I might have connection difficulties, and if I am lagging, please let me know and I will turn off my screen. My name is Sasha Caldera, and I am the Beneficial Ownership Transparency Campaign Manager at Publish What You Pay Canada. Publish What You Pay Canada is part of the global Publish What You Pay movement of civil society organizations working to make oil, gas, and mineral governance open, accountable, and responsive to all people. For the past 4.5 years, I have been leading a coalition consisting of 3 civil society organizations to advocate for a publicly accessible beneficial ownership registry with our partners, Transparency International Canada and Canadians for Tax Fairness. In Budget 2022, we applaud Minister Freeland's commitment to accelerate the timeline for a publicly accessible corporate beneficial ownership registry by 2023. This commitment is 2 years earlier than anticipated and includes participation from willing provinces and territories. Budget 2022 also includes a commitment for discussion with provinces and territories for a beneficial ownership property registry. Together, these announcements are important to combat the proceeds of crime from entering Canada's economy. Experts estimate that $45 billion to $113 billion is laundered annually into the country. Canada's announcement for a publicly accessible beneficial ownership registry is in line with other G7 and G20 countries committing to deploy such registries. These tools are now urgent national security priorities to prevent Russian oligarchs and other corrupt foreign officials from hiding dirty money in liberal democracies. Currently, 105 countries around the world have made commitments to implementing publicly accessible registries. The commitment in Budget 2022 for a public registry includes ensuring provinces and territories can participate in a registry system. As the vast majority of companies are registered within provinces, Ottawa will need to offer a blueprint by which provinces can get behind. We recommend for the federal government to reach an agreement with provinces and territories to allow provincially registered companies to send beneficial ownership information directly into a central registry that is managed by the federal government. In turn, provinces can mirror legislation to their own business acts based on legislative amendments to the Canada Business Corporations Act. Using this approach, provinces would not have to devote resources to upgrading their own business registries, and provincial authorities can access the back end of the registry for investigations. Additionally, provinces can use beneficial ownership property registries to track down properties that might be owned by oligarchs on sanctions lists. We hypothesize that provinces can reap substantial revenues from asset forfeitures, as we recognize that properties are commonly used as vehicles to launder money in Canada. Ottawa leading the design, staffing, and maintenance of a registry would be practical for a number of reasons. First, it would be appealing to smaller provinces that might not have the resources to collect and scrutinize beneficial ownership information. Second, Ottawa can commence work with willing provinces and eventually expand the registry to cover the entire country. And finally, if provinces start to collect and publish different information about beneficial owners on their own, it would be frustrating for businesses that require consistent data to fulfill anti-money laundering reporting requirements. Businesses having access to a free and searchable registry with verified data can reduce administrative costs to carry out due diligence checks and improve compliance with federal regulations. With respect to the legislative changes in Bill C-19, I would recommend that under Division 30, Section 21.21, subsection 1 should be revised to as follows. The corporation shall conduct ongoing monitoring and at least once each financial year ensure that it has identified all individuals with significant control over the corporation and that the information in the register is accurate, complete, and up to date. This revision is necessary because companies controlled by criminal organizations who wish to abuse the system or to evade taxes can delay updating beneficial ownership information by simply relying on this annual reporting requirement. The proposed change places the onus on the company to be proactive and ensures that the Director of Corporations Canada is kept informed. Moreover, that the public registry will possess the most accurate information about individuals of significant control. Moving forward, we urge the federal government to ensure that all design elements of a publicly accessible registry are included in the second Budget Implementation Act in order to meet the federal government timeline of 2023. Furthermore, stakeholder consultations must be carried out in the most transparent manner, where a diverse cross-section of civil society, journalist, and industry submissions are made public. We see this approach to be consistent with the goal of a publicly accessible registry, which is a crucial anti-money laundering tool that can strengthen the integrity of Canada's economy. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Caldera, and all our witnesses for your opening remarks. We're now moving to our first round of questions from members. In this round, each party has up to 6 minutes to ask questions of the witnesses. We're starting with the Conservatives, and I have MP Stewart up for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions today are for the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, and I'd like to thank you and each and every one of the presenters for being here today. So these questions can be answered by either Mr. Proughton or Ms. Wiseman. You guys can decide that for yourselves. I wanted to say by a few things. Growing up, my mother's two best friends, two sisters, they both had type 1 diabetes. They've both passed on at this point. They were very close. They lived just down the street. They grew up down the street from where I lived. Today, some of my best friends have children with type 1 diabetes as well. So certainly I'm no expert in it, but I have seen and witnessed some of the struggles firsthand. I'm going to give you some quotes from a friend of mine, just so that you can see the where the mindset is of many parents today that are parenting children with type 1 diabetes. This one particular mother, she says to me, "Jake, I'm now functioning as my child's pancreas. Literally. It's all in my to do what that pancreas is supposed to do, but now doesn't. I wonder if the Prime Minister thinks he needs his pancreas 24 hours a day. I can guarantee it's a 24-hour-a-day job, though I wish it were only 14 hours. I'd like to know how he would do working a full-time job and performing the job of his child's pancreas. The burden is so heavy that I've seen type 1 parents give their careers up to care for their child, and I've watched them run on minimal sleep themselves. The burden is really that heavy." So today my questions mainly sit along the disability tax credit. So both kids and adults who have type 1 diabetes require life-sustaining therapy for the rest of their lives. Most have insulin pumps, which give insulin 24 hours a day. Can you confirm that an inequality of access to the disability tax credit is really about patients and doctors trying to navigate an arbitrary and inconsistent rules by the Department of Finance and Revenue Canada? Thank you.
So I'll start and I'll let Dr. Wiseman maybe conclude, but we did a survey of our constituent base, and 43% of those that responded indicated that they have trouble getting the disability tax credit, and whether or not that's from their medical professional or getting through the system. But it's very bothersome that it's cumbersome for people, right? Because not only do they have this disease, but then they have to track what they're doing, and then they have to defend that to their GP or endocrinologist, right, about all the time and energy spent managing it. So this is really about giving people a credit, right, a disability tax credit, a financial break, but it's really they have to justify their life to get through the system to get the credit. And so your question is actually is very well directed, because that is a real challenge for us to get it through. And in some cases, doctors are being asked to be compensated for the time spent on the form. Dr. Wiseman can give more specifics, but it's a credit and it's costing people, which is unfortunate too.
Absolutely. I echo everything Dave has said, and I would just add that there is inequity in the system of applying for the tax credit because some providers may have only a few patients with type 1 diabetes, particularly in more rural or underserved areas. They may be less familiar with this process. And so we do see this inequity based on the particular provider's experience with this process, whether they support the application, and in addition, how much they might charge, as Dave alluded to, for completing this paperwork on behalf of the patient. And as Dave, I think, alluded to as well, this is a costly condition. Technologies, there's been a lot of progress. It's helped a lot of people. They're expensive. And regardless of the amount of time a patient is spending managing the condition, they're still having these financial burdens.
Thank you, Ms. Wiseman. Another comment that I had made from a parent was, does the government ask someone who is blind if they cannot see at least 14 hours per day? So you can see the mindset of type 1 diabetes, like the parents of children with type 1 diabetes, the stress that they're under. But does it defy common sense that Canadians requiring insulin multiple times a day for the rest of their lives don't automatically qualify as requiring life-sustaining therapy for at least 14 hours per week? I mean, when you think about this, it's a 24-hour-a-day process for anyone living with type 1 diabetes. Can you mind elaborating just a little further on that again?
I'm happy to. So absolutely, as Dave mentioned in his opening remarks, insulin is a life-sustaining therapy for people with type 1 diabetes. If they were to not administer insulin after a very short period of time, there is a risk of dangerously high blood sugars leading to potentially coma or even death or avoidable hospitalizations. So it is absolutely a life-sustaining therapy. Our standard of care is to deliver insulin in what we call intensively, which means either multiple injections per day. Each of those injections needs to be thought about and calculated, or through an insulin pump, which again is still being delivered on a 24-hour basis, and there are still multiple calculations and adjustments that need to be made at each day. So it is absolutely 24 hours life-sustaining therapy with insulin. It is also to note that in type 1 diabetes, there are no other medications approved for treatment. So we have one medication, and that is insulin.
Thank you.
Moving to the Liberals, MP Baker for 6 minutes.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks so much to all our witnesses for being with us today. I wish I had time to ask all of you questions, but I'm going to start with Mr. Charlebois, if I may. My understanding is that your research shows that food prices are going to rise approximately between 5 and 7% this year. Can you speak to what the key reasons are for this increase?
Certainly. So when we published Canada's food price report in December, we were expecting an increase of anywhere between 5 to 7%. Given what has gone on so far in 2022, we are expecting the 7% threshold to be surpassed, essentially because of the invasion of Ukraine, essentially. And I would probably point to two major factors. One, we did start the year with this COVID hangover affecting supply chains. What a lot of people may not appreciate is that as soon as efficiencies of supply chains are affected, it tends to cost more to move products around, whether it's on water or on land. And that's exactly what's been going on. Variants have actually impacted economies around the world at different times, in different ways. And to plan and predict and forecast in logistics has been very difficult and challenging for companies. And that's why it's costing more to do anything right now. So that's the one big factor. The other big factor, obviously, is the war. I mean, let's face it, that particular region is so critical to agriculture, global agriculture. It does produce a lot of grains, as I mentioned, but it's the impact, it's the reaction to the war that is really going to cost way more. I think sanctions towards Russia And also, what we're slowly seeing is our nations panicking. So we saw a few weeks ago Indonesia banning exports of palm oil. That's going to have a huge impact on vegetable oil as an ingredient. And vegetable oil is in everything we eat. It's impacting food service, food retail. Right now, already, we're seeing prices increase there, and that's going to have a huge impact on most food categories. And now, today, we just learned that India was banning exports of wheat, which is a very, as I mentioned in my opening reports, wheat represent basically 15% of all calories consumed in the world. And so we're going to be way short on wheat. Even if Canada, the U.S. have bumper crops this year, we're going to be seeing many people around the world suffer from hunger, unfortunately. And in Canada, we are expecting prices to rise significantly, way beyond 7%, unfortunately.
Thanks for that. That's a very fulsome answer. So based on what you've described there, all of these things, the war, supply chain issues, the actions taken by Indonesia, India, et cetera, these are all global forces. Like, these are global factors that are impacting food prices. Am I correct? I mean, there's some folks out there who've been saying that somehow the climate in food prices in Canada is due to domestic forces. But what I'm hearing you say is it's due to global forces. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So currently I'm speaking to you from Tampa Bay, Florida. I'm a visiting scholar at the University of South Florida. The food inflation rate here is 9.4%. So this is not just a Canadian phenomena. This is affecting the entire planet. And I think that that everyone should be worried about what's going on right now. Now, Canada is a rich country. Again, as I mentioned, access to food won't necessarily be an issue. However, food affordability will for many families in Canada as a result of what's going on.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. I just want to take a moment to ask the folks from Publish What You Pay Canada with my remaining 90 seconds, Chair.
Correct.
Okay. So if I could, just wanted to go back to, your organization was one of the driving forces behind the push to adopt a beneficial ownership registry. And Bill C-19 has taken the first step towards that with the amendments to the Canada Business Corporations Act. But can you tell us why a beneficial ownership registry is so critical?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. Baker. A beneficial ownership registry that is publicly accessible would deter the proceeds of crime from entering Canada. And this is really important because about $45 billion up to $100 billion is laundered through shell companies and shell properties and a variety of other means each year. And if the beneficial owners of these entities, that is the properties or the companies, if they knew that they would be locatable and accessible on a public registry, they would not register these entities in Canada. And we've seen these registries begin to be rolled out in many other G7 countries. And Canada, being a safe, stable, democratic country, has a huge risk if it leaves this back door to its economy open, where you can be a beneficial owner and incorporate a company or property anonymously.
Thank you.
MP Baker, moving to the block, and MP Sainte-Marie for 6 minutes, please.
Oui, merci, Monsieur.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Greetings to all the witnesses. Thank you for your presentations and for being here. My first questions will be for Mr. Bougie or Mr. Lambert. So, in C-19, the government would be bringing in an excise tax for wine producers based on a World Trade Organization dispute settlement. Contrary to Quebec, in Ottawa, wine means meat. That's the issue as far as I understand it. So could you confirm that's the point and tell us what the effect on your producers would be? Thank you very much for the question. Yes, the big issue for us is that at the federal level, wine means any agricultural product that has commodity that has been fermented in Canada. So as of 2006, we did have an exemption for wine, certain types of wines, 100% Canadian fermented. But since the World Trade Organization ruling, all wines have been put in the same box, so to speak. So, of course, you've got the grapes, which are the real issue when it comes to the dispute with Australia before the World Trade Organization. But here, there are other wines, fruit wines, maple syrup wines. They're all classified as wines and all get caught in the same net, so to speak, and will all have to pay the same excise tax, excise duties. So when it comes to the volume of mead produced in Quebec and across Canada, indeed, because, of course, in Quebec, there are about 25 permit-holding producers. You have to have your bees and have everything within Quebec to be classified as a Quebec producer, but we represent half the producers across Canada. So that means there are about 50 in Canada. That being said, there's no Canadian association per se. Even our provincial association is a new one because we have our hives and then we're all producing in our own ways, but we've started organizing ourselves. It's taken some time, but now we are organized and we're trying to speak for our producers on issues such as this. We think that not really specifying that there's a difference in excise duties, depending on the product you're producing, at least there should be cider as well. Now it's about meat and honey, alcohol. In our opinion, this is going down the wrong path, and this will have a very negative effect on small producers who, in Quebec, are to be found everywhere across the province, taking an economic activity that's leading to very good results in the regions. So then imposing this extra excise duty, along with, as I mentioned earlier, the higher input costs, and other witnesses have been speaking about this as well. So add all that up, the effect on production, it's really going to suck the air out of our business, making it even more complicated and more difficult for us to continue producing our products at prices that are relevant. So I'm not sure if my colleague would like to add anything. No, that's a great answer, René. Thank you. Well, congratulations for having come together and created an association. Of course, we know that just making mead from A to Z is a full-time job, and you really have to be passionate about it, and we can feel that in your presentation. Can you explain to us what the impact would be on any specific product, cost-wise, let's say, if C19 is adopted as it currently stands? Yes, let me take a light mead, 4.5% alcohol. The retail price, selling it to grocery stores, let's say, is about $2.90. So that would be higher with the excise duty, about 5% more per can of meat. Keep in mind that meat is a product that already costs more than cider or beer. Just to giving you some idea, a liter of alcohol, what it costs to produce a 5% alcohol per liter. Let's say grain alcohol, 1 liter, it costs about $7 to $9. But meat, it costs $18 to $25 to produce 1 liter of 5% alcohol. So our product just costs a lot more to make. So remaining competitive, especially when you see all the seltzers and low sugar products that are turning up now on the shelves, it's really important, of course, not only to have a product that stands out for quality, but it's also sold at a price that's acceptable. So managing to survive in such conditions, once you also add in transport costs and our inputs to feed the bees, to move the bees around, the higher diesel costs, and even the containers, I was mentioning that. So many of the glass bottles now cost twice as much, and even the labels. So adding an excise duty on top of it all, I think it would just have a very big impact on our sector. It wouldn't cost the government much, in a way, to continue exempting us. Right now, this is money that hasn't been collected since 2006. We're just asking for that exemption regime to be prolonged. And if not, then at least add us into the list of exceptions. We would like to be exempted in order to continue to grow and to be better and better known for the quality of our product. There are many beads, of course, but also honey alcohol producers who are doing so well in Quebec and producing wonderful stuff. Thank you for being so clear. Thank you, Chair. Have I run through my time? Yes. Thank you, Madame, Monsieur MP Saint-Marie.
P and MP Blakey for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much. I guess I'll start with a question to JDRF Canada. I know that your organization has done a lot of advocacy over the time that I've been a member of Parliament on the 14-hour requirement. When we asked officials in the context of this particular Budget Implementation Act why it was that they were maintaining this requirement, I was surprised to hear them make an equity argument. They said, well, it'd be unfair to make exceptions for people living with diabetes because other people have to meet the 14-hour requirement. I'm wondering if they've made this argument to you when you've had opportunities to speak with government, what justification they've offered to you in your conversations, and what you think of this apparent equity concern on the part of the government when it comes to folks without diabetes who are trying to access the disability tax credit.
Yeah, thank you for the question. You know, I think this is sort of relative to other diseases, right? I think that's one of the things that we've heard, that this was established in 1988, and we're actually not really sure of the genesis, if it was something like dialysis or, you know, some other condition. So 14 hours became a bit of a threshold. You know, and I guess we're seeing a longer list of activities being incorporated, such as carbohydrate counting to help, which is all positive. So what's interesting to us is we take away that there's this desire to help people with type 1 diabetes actually get the disability tax credit, and we're trying to thread the needle. And I think, you know, ideally we could get rid of the hour requirement, you know, because that would, you know, if you've got type 1 diabetes, you need insulin. It's a life-sustaining therapy, right? It's as simple as that. If we need to, you know, find a middle ground, we'd say, well, let's reduce that from 14 to 7 because, you know, it seems like the GPs and doctors, if that's a hurdle where people are sort of debating about is 14 hours enough, we don't think that's the real issue. It's not the amount of time. You have type 1, it's an expensive disease. It's meant to be a disability tax credit. It's meant to be a financial helper. It's not really about the time. So MP Blakey, we're trying to find a way that would actually be acceptable to the government to make this change. And we just think that it's, you know, we feel like we're all moving in the right direction, but we're really trying to find a way that could make it acceptable for more and more people with type 1 to get approved.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it just seems odd to me that if there's an acceptance of the in principle by the government that they do want to help people with type 1 diabetes, I don't know why it's so difficult when it's a pretty predictable process in terms of people knowing how much material they're going to need and knowing how much time it takes up in the day. So, I mean, have you heard anybody in government say, look, we just really don't think that people with type 1 diabetes are fit for the DTC program? That's not what the program was intended for, because I don't understand why and I'm not blaming you, I just find this logjam perplexing because it seems like a relatively straightforward problem and that the solution should be correspondingly straightforward.
So I think we would agree with you strongly, right? I mean, no, I mean, in reality, right? You've got type 1. You need insulin from the moment you're diagnosed. So therefore, it's a life-sustaining therapy. You know, if you're making an extra 300 decisions a day, I think I did a calculation. That's like 12 seconds a decision, right? To get up to an hour a day. I mean, I know we make a lot of decisions very quickly these days, but when you're making a dosing decision about how much to give insulin to give you, right? That's a calculation. It's not done in 12 seconds. So I think you're spot on here, and I think we just are trying to find a way to get things as low as possible so more people can get it can just go to their GP, go to their endocrinologist, and not have to debate about the number of hours so a form can get signed and completed.
And how frequent would you say, or how normal is it for the CRA to push back on people's paperwork on this? Have you heard a lot of stories of people who are having the details of their paperwork being contested by the CRA?
Well, I mean, we had the big issue a few years ago when there were some changes being made.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say that's when this really came to light, and we've never really been. I guess ever since then we've been battling that, and it just seems like there's a series of them, right? It's that patients have to track their hours, then the doctors have to sign it off, and then the CRA has to review it. So it's actually a very, very complicated and cumbersome process, and many steps of the journey, I would say.
It would be interesting to calculate the kind of hourly value of everybody's time who's involved in that process, and compare it to the expenditure by government on the tax credit measure itself. I suspect we're asking for a lot of productivity invested in a relatively low cost outcome for government.
Well, and the other thing is companies have started to pop up, right? Because to actually be the processors and of the forms, right? Because it's such a cumbersome process. So if this could be streamlined for the patients, which is what this is really about,
mm-hmm.
That would be the win, right? If they could just have a very simple form that they could, know would be accepted if you've got type 1 diabetes, the whole system would be much more efficient, right? From patient to government supporting them.
Indeed. Well, if I do have some time remaining, Mr. Chair, I'd be
15 seconds.
Okay. Well, I'll give that up and wait for my next round. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And members, and witnesses, we are moving into our second round now, and we have the Conservatives up first, and I have MP Chambers for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you to our witnesses for appearing, and apologies for those of you who were ready to appear last week, but we're glad to have you back this week with us. Professor Charlebois, I was very surprised, I guess, or perhaps concerned this morning when I saw some of the news about more protectionism with respect to wheat exports coming out of India. You mentioned also the palm oil issue as well. Do you think that Canada, I know you mentioned we're a rich country and we'll likely be okay, but do you think the government is prepared for what could happen?
I assume you're talking about supplies and food security domestically. Is that your question?
Yeah, just generally, do you think are we in a good spot? Is the government prepared for some of the negative potential scenarios that will come with food shortage issues, supply issues, etc.?
I don't see any evidence of that at this point, and I'm using the federal budget as evidence. I think Ottawa's intent is to make our agriculture greener, which is fine, but what the world needs is a more efficient Canadian agriculture really right now, and I'm thinking about some of the tariffs that farmers are exposed to. Farmers are price takers, and Mr. Bougie actually, in his sector, that's exactly what he's talking about. Price taking economics is quite cruel, especially in a context of a global food security crisis. Canadian farmers need more breathing room. They need access to fertilizers, affordable fertilizers, which is not what they have right now. The cost of diesel is also impacting the entire supply chain. I don't see any measures right now that is going to help our entire supply chain at this point to make sure that food access is not an issue at all at this point, unfortunately.
Well, thank you very much for that answer. And I represent a riding that has significant agriculture and farmers in it. They're expressing those concerns that you expressed to me. I know when you were speaking with my colleague, Mr. Baker, about global forces on the supply chain and increasing inflation prices on food, there are some things that are within the government's control and some things that are outside of the government's control. So let's set aside the things that are outside the government's control. Do you think the government's taking steps on the things that are within its control to keep inflation on food price low?
I will say this. I mean, there's nothing wrong with food inflation, but food inflation that is out of control is really a disease affecting many, many families, and that's where we're at right now. I would say that food affordability is a challenge, and honestly, right now, I don't see any evidence that the government is actually oversighting properly the entire system. And I'll give you one example. Again, I did mention that I'm in the U.S. I've been in the U.S. for 6 months, and the White House has been very forthcoming and frankly aggressive in terms of how price fixing is occurring in the U.S. And there are some anomalies right now in Canada, I must say. I mean, some price increases are justified while others are difficult to explain. And I'm not suggesting that there is criminal behavior going on, but there are increases right now that are beyond any data that we have at the lab. It's hard to explain. And in some section of the grocery store, we're seeing double-digit increases. And I'm thinking of the center of the store, the meat counter, dairy as well. There's a lot of things going on that really I would certainly encourage Ottawa to look into very seriously.
Thank you very much. I have about 30 seconds left, I think. I'd just like to switch to Mr. Caldera for a moment. Thank you for your work in pushing the government to advance its interests. 2 quick questions for you. The need for it to be publicly accessible, that is not currently yet being planned. Well, it's planned for the future, but not immediately. So can you touch on that briefly? And then just a quick on, have you been reached out to the consultations to begin yet by Industry Canada?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chambers. Yes, so the registry must be publicly accessible, full stop. All other G7 countries are. You even have fragile states globally who are going ahead with publicly accessible registries. And for Canada not to have a publicly accessible registry, it would be a very limited registry as part of the registry design moving forward. We have not been contacted yet by Innovation, Science and Economic Development with regards to the status of consultation. We do hope that it will take place over the summer.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Chair, for your indulgence.
Thank you, MP Chambers. Moving to the Liberals, MP Zerowitz for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I want to thank all the presenters for their excellent presentations and for being here today. My first question is for JDRF Canada. In the last Parliament, my colleague Sonia Sidhu, she sponsored Bill C-237, which was adopted with support from all parties. And Bill C-237 set a requirement for the government to present a national framework for diabetes. This framework, I understand, is due by the end of June. Have you been consulted by the government on this framework, and what do you hope to see from it?
So thank you for the question. Yes, we've been involved in the consultations. There's been a series of meetings. I would say the Public Health Agency of Canada seems to be driving it. And what we hope to see out of it is a real mandate. So I think a framework could just be sort of a document that outlines some things to do, but I would prefer to see a mandate with some real action that would help address things like prevention of diabetes. So we're a type 1 diabetes organization, but there's type 1, there's type 2. We need to have a strategy that would address the different areas of diabetes, prevention, research, management, et cetera. So I think it's got to be comprehensive and action-oriented.
And I just want to say huge thanks to both you, Mr. Proughton, and to Dr. Wiseman, just for your extraordinary leadership. I do think that we're very determined to take additional measures to provide support to those suffering from diabetes in Canada. My next question is to Agri-Food Analytics Lab and Dr. Charles Lebois. Dr. Charles Lebois, You've presented some very important testimony this morning, and I want to continue along the questioning that Mr. Chambers had started in terms of how can the Canadian government it's very difficult when there are forces beyond your control, but I really want to explore what more we might be able to do here in Canada to help support Canadians, to support farmers, to improve food security, and if there's any way that we could even slightly reduce some of the anticipated pricing increase that we're seeing. So I've heard from you, we need more affordable fertilizer. I've heard about diesel prices. As you know, that's nothing we could deal with. I've heard about you in terms of dealing with price fixing, being more aggressive. Is there anything else we could do nationally? So that's question one. And two, what can we be pushing for internationally that would be helpful?
It's a great question. I'm not sure there's anything we can do this year.
Okay.
Because we're May 16th. Either seeds are in the ground or they're about to be in the ground. Contracts are signed. But right now, I would say if you start with FarmGate, a lot of farmers are flying in the dark. They're actually committing to contracts without knowing how much they're going to pay. So that is not helping. And farmers are motivated to grow. They're motivated to produce because game prices are very high. But up the food chain, you're seeing a lot of consolidation. There are fewer players having a lot of power. Whether it's in grain handling, in processing, in distribution. And I know that the Competition Bureau has actually registered concerns about the Shaw-Rogers deal recently. I would have hoped that the Bureau would have actually registered concerns about the 1998 deal between Provigo and Loblaws, the 2005 A&P deal with Metro, and the 2013 deal between Empire and Safeway out west. I mean, all of these deals have actually given more power, more authority, more influence on just a handful of players, which is really impacting competition. It's impacting everything we do domestically. Internationally, I would say it's important to recognize that we need to make sure that our supply chains remain resilient and that we continue to encourage companies and traders to trade abroad and make our agriculture much more efficient. Just one piece of data for you. There are only a few provinces where the territory used to support agriculture has increased in the last 5 years. And we're talking 1 or 2%. That would be Quebec, Alberta, and I believe Manitoba. Canada right now, since 2006, is at -8. We're using less land to produce more food. So you can see that really right now, agriculture is under a lot of pressure to produce more. I would look into that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Zarowitz, it's the time. And now from the block for 2.5 minutes, MP Samari.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président. Donc,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Still for Mr. Bougie or Mr. Lambert. You have clearly shown us that meat is more expensive to produce than is cider or any other alcoholic product, that the costs of production are rising, and now you have the excise duty due to the fact that Ottawa is not imposing a difference between wines and meat. What about the SAQ, the Société des Alcools du Québec, the Quebec Liquor Commission, and could we take any inspiration from what they're doing? Thank you for the question. We did have an opportunity, our association, to speak with some negotiators of the Ministry of Economy and Innovation of Quebec, and in that negotiation, they managed to agree to sort of tell the difference between the different types of alcoholic products. Speaking with Australia at the OMC, they just spoke of wine, but they agreed that what's really at issue is grape wine, that's really what's at issue for the Australians at least. But as we were saying, meat, and we produce about 90,000 litres of meat in Quebec. More and more than that, of course, but it's a growing sector. But being lumped into the same package as wines that are made with grapes and so on, it's really a big weight. on our shoulders. So at the provincial level, negotiators were able to explain that distinction to the powers that be. And on the 1st of December 2023, the SAQ markup will not apply to honey, alcohol, meads, maple syrup wine, maple wines, fruit wines. But the federal regulation, C19, there is a section for exemptions, but this is not something that's been taken into account there among the exemptions. We think it would be essential that that take place so that we'll be able to continue doing business for our producers. Costs overall are already rising, and this will be just the straw that breaks the camel's back. We are trying to diversify our production as well to add value to what we're producing right here in Canada. So facing a barrier like this, especially given that this is not a duty that has been in effect since 2006 for producers producing wines out of Canadian commodities, 100% Canadian productions. So bringing it in now, yes, indeed, there are some programs that compensate us for this that we can use, but comparing that to what's offered elsewhere in the country, we can see that it's really not enough to cover the difference for us. So our main request is to prolong the exemption, the excise duty exemption regime, and to be listed in that list of exempted products. Especially that this wouldn't be, new taxes that would make their way into the public coffer. These things weren't taxed in the past. There was no duty to be paid before. So we certainly hope that the House of Commons will support us and recognize our exceptional situation and the specifics of what we actually produce. Very good. We'll work on that. Thank you, Mr. Saint-Marie.
We'll hear from NDP, MP Blakey for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Caldera. I just wanted to circle back on the question of the public beneficial ownership registry. We've talked a little bit already how there's some first steps toward that, but I wonder if you could kind of highlight what you think are the important next steps that need to follow and what the timeline ought to be for those next steps.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Blakey. And so first of all, what we think would be the immediate next steps is for stakeholder consultations to occur with industry, civil society, journalists, and international civil society. These consultations can be stretched out over the summer, and they should be conducted in a very transparent manner. If it's possible to have these consultations in front of committee, and where all stakeholders can submit their views and perspectives on the record and talk about what they want to see in a registry publicly, that is ideal. And it is because the very nature of this tool is to utilize transparency as a way to deter the proceeds of crime from entering our economy. And we think a transparent consultation would be very, very important and consistent with that goal. The next step would be for the federal government to convene provinces and territories through, the regular finance ministers' meetings, and to say we are going ahead with a centralized, publicly accessible registry and reach out to provinces and form a coalition of the willing. This way, we think there'll be many early adopter provinces who would be interested in joining. We note that the province of Quebec has already made a commitment to make its beneficial ownership information public and searchable in its own registry. British Columbia has done the same with properties. And Atlantic Canada provinces, I think, will be very, very much enthusiastic supporters simply because they might not have the capacity to this kind of upgrading. So the agreement and the framework for a pan-Canadian registry can be achieved through the federal, provincial, territorial meetings which regularly occur. After consultations, we think all of this should be packaged into the next Budget Implementation Act, and as a whole, swiftly passed before the end of the year. And those three steps, I think, will set up Canada to meet that 2023 target.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we'll hear questions from the Conservatives. MP Albus for 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses for being here today. I'd like to concentrate mainly on Mr. Charlebois, as well as maybe get to the meat and honey alcohol producers. But I just want to say to Mr. Prowden and Dr. Wiseman, thank you for the work you do. Connecting me with local advocates like the Finlatter family in West Kelowna has really changed my thinking on what we can do as a country. But I just wanted to thank you for your work, and very glad that my colleague MP Stewart has been asking questions. So to start with, Mr. Charlebois, thank you for being here. You've been a little critical of the government, saying that the White House is looking out to try and affect, as many policies as it can to help Americans cope with inflation, and you've been very critical of the government. As a G7 country, we've seen other, I guess Joe Biden being one of them, proposed in the United States to open up the strategic gas reserves. We don't have those strategic gas reserves here, but we do have, and Conservatives have proposed, a cut to the GST on diesel and regular gas as a way to allow businesses, especially those that are affected, to save a little bit of money so that they can cope with it, but also especially for low income or those on fixed income. Do you think that a GST break on diesel would help people both, and fuel, I should say in general, would help both at the agricultural level, the grocery chain, as well as with consumers?
Thank you for the question. I would probably say at Farmgate, it would be critical to apply a break like that. Closer to the consumer, I don't know, but I do believe that farmers have no options but to absorb extra costs. So they're at the mercy of what's happening. As it was mentioned before, we don't have control over diesel prices, but certainly we can help our farmers. For other components, other levels of the supply chain, they have options. They have different options. And don't forget that when you walk into a grocery store, there are on average 18 different thousand food products. So there's lots of that going on. People have choices, but in farming, farmers don't have a choice. So I would actually look at Farmgate specifically.
Move quickly to the Association of Meat and Honey Alcohol Producers of Quebec, and I have to say, I'm sorry, mon français n'est pas le meilleur, mais
I do apologize. My French is not of the best, but perhaps.
Exactly. You've been lumped in, your association has been lumped in the wine category, and so now you are subject to the same changes that the wine industry and cider industry are under. Is that correct?
Yes, if I can answer to your question, actually, when we are in the federal law, when we are talking about wine, we are talking about all fermented product that are produced by Canadian product. So there is no difference between grape, honey, and other thing like that. So actually, with the end of the exemption, we will all have to pay this tax. So it's for that we are asking to have the same acknowledging that in Quebec to be able to not be
subject to it,
not
yes.
have this
okay.
kind of yes.
The next question I have is you have a bottling deadline of July 1st, where anything bottled in July 1st on is going to be subject to this new tax. Is your industry ready for this, or are they having supply chain issues like we are seeing in cider and with the wineries?
we are all in the same situation. Actually, it's going to be a big issue. It will arrive very fast.
Okay, and so your industry has not had to pay this tax before. Do many of your producers, are they aware that they're going to have to pay this, or will it be a shock when they receive the bill in the mail?
For sure, it's going to be a shock because we are an association and we were looking for this information many months ago. And actually, we received this information and we begin to do our representation because we just find it about this problematic and we say we cannot have this.
Last question, sir. So you said because of the way your meat is produced, this tax will hit you harder than other industries. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, it's correct because to produce meat, it's more expensive because honey costs more to produce than apple or grain or other agricultural matter. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, MP Albus. Now moving to the Liberals, MP MacDonald for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to direct my questions to you, Mr. Charlebois. I follow you, being from Atlantic Canada, Mr. Charlebois, and living in a riding that consists of many farms. So I'm always reading and seeing what you have to say. And the conflict and climate change are having major effects on inflation, as you said. But it's also creating financial speculation into trading and grain futures, for example. And I won't be as kind as you were on calling the last farmer that I spoke to called the grain pirates is what he referred to them to. But they're creating artificial inflation by doing this. And I just want to know that with everything that's happening right now, are high food prices here to stay based on what we're seeing now?
Well, thank you, Mr. MacDonald, for the question. So yes, I think we're seeing a new normal. Prices won't drop anytime soon for a variety of reasons. It's unpredictability is really just pushing companies to hedge against risks very differently, and I think since COVID they're adopting a new mindset, and we're seeing it across the board, not just in Canada, around the world. But I just want to go back to one comment I made about the White House and what's going on in the United States versus Canada. There's much more oversight here in the United States. I believe the reason why we're seeing more of a forceful government in the United States looking at, I would say, unacceptable behavior from some companies is because they have data. They actually have access to a lot of data to see exactly patterns in terms of pricing and what's going on across the supply chain, which is something in Canada, frankly, we do not have. If companies have data, it's either protected or it's very pricey. It's very expensive. In Canada, data is not democratized in the agri-food world, which is why we created the lab in the first place, by the way, at Dalhousie University. But in the United States, it's so easy to get data, to get the story, and perhaps see particular scenarios that wouldn't be acceptable socially. And that's why we're seeing a much more forceful American government looking at the beef industry or the grain industry and things like that. That's how I would explain
Mr. MacDonald, Mr. Charles, just a moment, please. Members, bells are ringing. I think we have about 27 minutes or so right now. Just looking for unanimous consent to see if we can go up to, everybody is okay with that? Yeah, okay, great. Okay, if you could continue.
Mr. Charlebois, we have the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. How do we strengthen and expand that market information system that maybe you're just talking about, and what would you do personally to adhere to that or create a more open process?
Sir, are you talking about the FAO specifically?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, the FAO has a critical role to play, obviously, with the World Food Program in particular, which is going to be in a deficit again this year. I would certainly recommend continuing to support the program itself. I've actually had the pleasure to work at the FAO in Rome for a month about 6 years ago. And I mean, the FAO is trying its best to supply and support developing countries where food security is actually an issue. So yes, absolutely, I would encourage Canada to continue to support the program supported and sponsored by the FAO at this point.
And you talked one of your recent interviews on BNN. You talked about the tension in the food industry. Can you just elaborate on what you mean by the tension in the food industry?
I was, so if I remember correctly, I was actually using as an example the stop sell that occurred between Frito-Lay and Loblaw. You may recall about a month ago, Frito-Lay or PepsiCo decided to stop selling to Loblaws because they couldn't agree on prices. Stop sales are frequent in the food industry, but right now there are many stop sales as a result of a higher food inflation rate. Companies try to increase prices or adjust prices, but like I said, going back to my comment about power and influence, the grocers in particular will try to keep prices down and increase margins at the same time, which is why, and right now the federal government is working on a code of practice. I think this would solve a lot of these issues right now, and I'm hoping at some point that we will see a code of practice being implemented in Canada as we are seeing it right now in the UK and Australia.
MP McDonald. And now we'll move, this is our third round, members. We have MP Fast up first for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses. I'm going to direct my questions to Mr. Charlebois. In your testimony, you referred to food inflation as a disease. Did I hear you correctly?
Yes, you did, sir.
All right. Today in the Guardian newspaper, the governor of the Bank of England has warned of apocalyptic food prices, which he said will be disastrous for the world's poor. Those are his words, but I think they reflect what you've just said. So do you agree with the assessment that this could be apocalyptic in its scope?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Fass. I would say I consider myself as an optimist most of the time. I do believe in the nature of free markets, and I do believe that we have a strong agri-food economy in Canada. It lacks ambition, but it is a strong economy. I mean, we do very well for the most part, but I am greatly concerned right now. I'm very concerned, and I'm not convinced, based on conversations I've had with different people in Canada. I've traveled back to Canada several times the last few weeks, and I actually don't believe that Canadians are fully aware of what's going on. I mean, we're really facing a global food security crisis. Like I said, I don't think Canada will run out of food, but it will get pricier. Germany is one country where we're likely to see prices explode. UK as well. And so those are things that we need to prepare ourselves.
Now, you said that you expect food prices in Canada to surpass, and I think these are your words, way beyond 7%. Am I correct in having heard you say that?
That's correct. So numbers are being reported by StatsCan, but we actually have every reason to believe that Statistics Canada is under evaluating the current food inflation rate right now. We actually do believe that the actual food inflation rate in Canada in March was close to 9.5 to 10%.
Okay. I'd like a little bit of additional guidance from you, because you've mentioned a number of things Canada could do. Price fixing. You said we should perhaps be looking at how we do mergers and acquisitions within the grocery space. More affordable fertilizer, more affordable fuel for farmers. We talked about perhaps suspending the GST. But you also referenced genetic innovation in how we produce food. Perhaps you could expand on that a little bit.
Yes, there's lots of great work. Canada is a leader in genetic engineering. and I don't think we've embraced that enough. So from a business perspective, we're doing very well. Farmers believe in the technology being developed in Canada, but there's a lot of noise, as you probably know, Mr. Fast. There's a lot of noise on the margins, discouraging governments and industry to use genetic engineering to make our agriculture safer. And I think the science has been pretty clear for decades now. The science is pretty strong, and we need to be clear right now. We're just waiting for Health Canada to make public guidance for gene editing. It's been months now. We've been waiting for the guidance, and you can feel that Ottawa is always hesitating to approve traits, to approve new technology, and I think we need a firm commitment from the federal government at this point, just because of what we're seeing right now around the world.
Okay. Is there anything in the budget right now that supports genetic engineering?
Not clearly, no. But I can say that the most recent climate change report tabled by the World Group on Climate Change does suggest implicitly, not directly and clearly, but implicitly, it does encourage the use of genetic engineering to actually provide a safer, more sustainable agriculture to the world.
All right. A question to the Meat Association from Quebec. Are you aware of whether the federal government actually ever conducted an economic assessment to determine the impact that this new excise tax would have on your own industry?
Actually, I cannot tell. Maybe Vincent, you hear about something, but actually about the specific impact, we just know the money they want to put in the compensation program, but actually there is like Vigneron Canada that are doing some research about it to evaluate the impact that it can have. But more than that, I don't know if you have other information, Vincent.
We did held conversations with Wine Growers Canada that told us that as René said, that the programs that would be put in place to reimburse the excise tax was not sufficient. If they did some sort of a study on the costs and impacts, I couldn't tell.
Thank you. And thank you, MP Fast. And we're moving to the Liberals, MP Châtel, for 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to say that in the budget, $600 million for innovation have been announced, agricultural innovation, keeping in mind that this is highly important and will contribute to our processes remaining efficient. So I just wanted to point that out. I do have some questions. Yes, thank you so much for the witnesses here before us today. And thank you, Mr. Charles Lebois, for your suggestions about possible ways forward, possible solutions to explore. Terribly important. We certainly know that the cause of rising food prices is the war in Ukraine. Higher wheat costs, oil and gas, agricultural inputs as well. Even if we work hand in hand with our allies to solve this world crisis, the war itself, and we must remain fiscally prudent coming out of the pandemic, this will not change the fact that vulnerable people will be at risk of experiencing food insecurity. In my riding, it's a rural riding, very soon people will be having to choose between filling up their vehicle to get to work or paying for their groceries for the week. So I'm very worried about this. You have suggested some ways to lay out some solutions. I'm happy for that. Have you heard about any solutions being proposed by some of our partners, the G7, for example, partners, innovative approaches that would be helpful for us that we could adopt as well? Thank you very much for your question. Of course, it's always difficult to change anything in a couple of days, of course. To ensure long-term food security, you need a long-term vision. There are some measures the government has undertaken that are helpful. For example, we are working with Protein Industries Canada, which is based in Regina, which is an innovation hub created in 2016, if I'm remembering this correctly, and it has encouraged many businesses, many enterprises to invest in transformative practices. I think that the future will be a processing one based on processing, food processing across the country. In the Atlantic provinces, very little processing. There are some provinces where local purchases is about 3 or 4% of the food consumed in that region. Nova Scotia has lost 28% of its farms over the last 5 years, and there's no processing, no renewal somewhere down the supply chain for that industry. So I would come up with a processing vision for farm-to-table supply chains. So that group was very helpful, helping producers to think local. That's nice, but you need to think of that in the framework of an open economy. Quebec seems to have understood that. Its policy for food security, food independence, has been to support the growth of domestic capacity to feed the locals, but also be able to export and bring wealth into the province. For example, strawberries in Quebec. Consumers are being encouraged to eat strawberries year in and year out, not just in the traditional spring season for a couple of weeks only. So that's the sort of approach that we'll need to work out for everyone in the country, not only in Quebec. Thank you very much. So that would be a strategy, somewhat like Quebec's strategy, and that would be based on local buying, autonomy, local autonomy, food autonomy. The only place that has created 451 new farming and food enterprises created in Quebec in the last 5 years. The only province that has created any, actually. Thank you very much. If I may, I'd like to put a question about the beneficial ownership registry. A very important question. Very good to have a register, but you need quality data in that log, in that register. And you need to ensure that authorities be able to drill down and see who is actually the beneficial owner at the end of a long line of linked companies. So my question is for Mr. Caldera. I would like to hear you on this. Are there some issues, any challenges that we face that keep us from getting the best possible data?
Thank you very much for that question. So right now, data validation and verification is an emergent, I would say it's an emergent technology right now. And it has also been raised as an issue of concern amongst the countries that are implementing publicly accessible registries. When the UK first implemented the Companies House registry in 2016, one of the biggest criticisms was that the data was not verified, and that hindered the ability of law enforcement and competent authorities to carry out investigations. And it also made the data quite, I would say, risky for reporting entities that had due diligence obligations. So the tool itself was useful, but without verified or validated data.
Thank you, Mr. Caldera. Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate it. And if you could just get some more of that answer to us in writing, that would be great. And the reason I say that, I'm looking at the time, members, and I do have the Bloc and the NDP, to be fair, on all the parties having an opportunity. So I'll have Monsieur Samari up for 2.5 minutes. Thank you.
Oui, merci.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions go to Mr. Charlebois. Given that I have only 2.5 minutes this time, I will put all my questions up front. Thanks for all the work you're doing. We can see from the committee's questions today and also what we see of you on the media that you're very helpful to all of us, helping us better understand the food issue right now in the agro-food sector. And thank you for being here, especially given how serious this situation is. So here are my 3 questions. How much did last year's droughts affect inflation of food products this year? How much this summer could we in Canada bring up our food production and processing as well, produce and process more food, which might be a short-term solution, and how much is that actually feasible? How feasible is that? And third, what is the possible impact of the recent flooding in Alberta on food, obviously? Thank you very much for the questions. Very quickly, the droughts. 2022 opened with very low inventory because of the droughts. We wanted 2022 to be more productive, but unfortunately, right now there's more humidity in Western Canada than last year, so hopefully there won't be any droughts, but we're not very sure. Last year's drought, though, was indeed disastrous. The figures show as much. It was a big problem and remains a problem. There were droughts in Russia and the United States at the same time, and also flooding. So we hope that this will be a better summer. Now, the amount of planting, not much to be done right now, sir, I'm afraid. Producers are indeed motivated to produce more. But now we've got the floods in Manitoba. We think it will not necessarily make such a big difference. It'll take a little longer to get the seed into the ground, to sow the crops, but we don't think there will be an impact of the flooding.
We'll have MP Blakey from the NDP before we conclude our meeting today.
Mr. Chair, I think we have to adjourn. It's 10 minutes.
Yeah, we're just going to give 2 minutes for MP Blakey.
Okay.
Is everybody okay?
Thank you very much. And I just want to come back quickly to Mr. Caldera talking about timing of further changes required to establish a public beneficial ownership registry. One of the criticisms we've heard of the government's enactment of sanctions against Russian oligarchs is that it took longer than it should have. And in that time, a number of the targets of those sanctions were able to sell off their assets. And I'm just wondering if there's a similar consideration here in terms of the timeliness of establishing a public beneficial ownership registry, particularly for those who are concerned to do that as a tool to apply pressure to Russia.
For sure, and that concern is being echoed by anti-money laundering experts in all G7 countries, particularly those who are part of repo task forces. This is why the registry needs to be set up expeditiously and with verified data. There is technology on how to do this in Canada, and the Canadian government can learn, particularly from the Digital Identity Authentication Council of Canada.
Right on. Thank you very much. I know we're short on time, Mr. Chair, so I'm happy to leave it at that.
Well, thank you, MP Blakey. I want to thank the witnesses. We really appreciate your time, your expertise for coming before our committee on C-19. And you could submit anything that you would like in writing for some of the members if you were not able to give your fulsome answer. So on behalf of the committee, we thank you very much, the clerk, the analysts, the interpreters, and all the staff here. Have a wonderful day. Members, we'll adjourn